Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do a little disassembly and maintenance on this little guy here. This is the Benchmade Proper. And it is a slip joint, but you can see here it is actually put together with screws. So let's see if we can maintain this guy properly. Yeah. Hate to say it, but if you struggled with that, the review is just going to be trouble for you. This is T6 Torx here. You can kind of get it. It's small screws. Traditionals don't tend to have that anyways. But there we go. Interesting little knife here, a sort of modernized traditional. Used S30V steel, G10, etc. And as far as I'm aware, it's the very first slip joint out of Benchmade. Yeah, let's see if we can pop this guy apart and do some good work for the action here. Right now, my biggest concern with this knife in terms of maintenance is that the pull on it is very strong, meaning it really takes a lot of, there we go, that's popped loose. It really takes a lot of doing to open and close this guy. That's largely a function of the spring tension on this big spring here, but I'm wondering whether a little lubrication might not hurt that sort of an affair. How strong is this spring? Or put differently, when I pull this blade off of here, am I ever going to get it back on? That's an interesting question. Well, it's one we're going to answer. But anyways, so you can see here there's really not all that much to the knife. Okay, yeah, it's only a little bit of travel here. But there's not all that much to this knife, and that's a beautiful thing. I mean, there's a liner, there's some G10, some G10. There is the back spacer, which also serves as the bar for the slip joint, the spring bar, I guess. I occasionally feel awkward about the fact that I am just not very knowledgeable about the slip joint world. I'm sure there is a term for that. In fact, I may even know the term. It's probably like spring bar or something. But if you happen to know the term and you are a viewer, well, frankly, if you aren't the viewer, you wouldn't be seeing this and answering the question. So I'm assuming that you are all the viewers. But anyways, for the subset of humans that are currently watching this video and know what that term is, leave it in the comments, please, because it would be handy to have. So, okay, I'm just trying to clean this guy up here, making sure everything's okay. Yeah, I'm really slightly concerned about my prospects of getting this guy back together, but we'll see. A couple of things to highlight, though. Phosphor bronze washes, which is great. Always a fan of seeing phosphor bronze in the world. And to see it on a slip joint sort of affair is nice, too, because very often slip joints are just, right on metal. Is that a big deal? No, not really. But, it's always good to see that. Maybe wear a little better over time. Smoothness is in many ways more determined on a slip joint by the blade tang against the spring bar, I guess, in the back there, than it is by, the lateral contact. So, it's not like phosphor bronze is going to make this markedly smoother, but, hey, it might. We're going to go ahead and since we've cleaned every surface of this guy, because there's not that much going on, I'm going to go ahead and put this guy back together. We'll note here that there is a D-shaped pivot, which means this is not free spinning, which is good because it's not tooled on the other side. So we'll go ahead and slide that pivot right on in here. Come on. Pop in. Boppity boppity. Little bugger. There we are. Okay, pivots through. Great. Now we're going to use a little bit of a thicker oil. I'm going to use the 85 weight nano oil. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit to either side of the spring bar here, just so that way we can get, if there's any friction there, that'll be removed. I'll go ahead and put a little on the pivot as well. A little. Okay, I'm Nick Shabazz. I'm going to go ahead and soak the freaking pivot in it. There we go. Drop the washer down there, rotate it. A little more on there. Okay. Moment of truth, folks. Let's see if I can pop this back on here. So I need to find the area where it has the least. Oh, one thing to highlight, by the way. I didn't really note, say anything when this guy came flying out because I kind of expected it to. But this little guy right here is this is an inner stop. So it's like the stop pin for the blade. So we need to make sure that when we put this guy back together, that's in there, or else the blade is going to contact the backspacer, and that's just going to be really ugly. So hopefully I remember to do that. But alrighty, back at the ranch, let's go ahead and try and get this guy in here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to see if I can kind of use the blade itself to push the spring out of the way. Yeah, there we go. Hey, we did it. Cool. So the pivot is not all the way in yet, but that's okay. We can use the screw itself to kind of get that in there. Yeah, everything is still properly oriented. That's good. But yeah, so we're back on track, back in business. Let's go ahead and put a little bit of oil on this side of the pivot and go ahead and distribute it there. Okay, next step, this little guy. Unfortunately, it is a tiny little part, and it is going into a tiny little hole. Little bugger. So I'm going to take a little bit of extra effort with your tweezers here to pop that in there. All right, come on. There we go, we are in. Alrighty, beautiful. Now, next step is going to be, yeah, that's sufficiently lubricated. Next step is going to be to pop everything back together. There we go. Okay, now we have a slight problem in that there is some spring tension here, and it is not, like the pivot you can see isn't fully seated in this thing. Part of that is because the pivot itself isn't fully seated. We can see that over there. But part of it is just because I think there is actually some deformation required, not like deformation in the sense of the Anti-Defamation League. It's a different thing. But deformation, there you go. And so that hasn't happened yet. There we go. I think that's popped through. Yeah, because you see, if this needs to hold some spring tension. In order for this, if the pivot is in line, then this back guy isn't, and so on. So I'm going to see if I can... Actually, here's what I'm going to do. Don't pay too much attention to this. I don't know that this is the best approach, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pivot here to pull the... Just screw the other side in here and then tighten it down a little bit to pull the pivot in on the other side. And we can see here that it is already working. It's pulling the pivot up there. And so then when I unscrew this, my pivot should still be reasonably prominent. Yeah, and now it's all the way through the hole. Now what I got to do is just torque this a little bit. I'm a little scared of this blade being out and about, but I just got to get this freaking liner. There we go. So now it's popped in on this side, it's popped in around the pivot, and it's popped in around the middle. Before I screw anything up, let's go ahead and put this guy back together. Okay. Let's use some Loctite here. Use my little Loctite stick, which is something I've appreciated and enjoyed lately. As far as I can tell, there's not really a difference in terms of the Loctititude of it. It seems to work just as well. But it is definitely easier to use, in my experience. For me, who is not a brilliant man, hashtag. Oh, shoot. It looks like we've... Oh, no. We're able to pop back in there readily. That's good. Trying not to cross-thread this, but by God, it's not working. Let's pull this back out a little bit more. There we go. That's better. Tightening that down. Good. That's tightened. Now we'll just drop the last one in here. I think we're going to be done. 9-minute disassembly of a Benchmade. That'll be a brand new thing. Oh, no. The Anthem. That was quick as heck. There was one screw. It says 3 times the number of screws. It's absurd. All right. Tighten that down. Beautiful. Okay. So now we'll just go through and we'll do some tightening. That's a little too tight, maybe. Let's see if we can pop this out. No blade play. Actually, the pull is a little nicer. That's very good. And I'm going to go ahead. Anytime I have a backlock or a slip joint sort of knife, I will apply a little bit of a viscous oil generally to the back and the tang of the blade here. And all that that's going to do is reduce the amount of friction that's between the lock, well, in this case, the spring bar, and the blade tang there. Yeah, it'll accumulate a little gunk, but especially on this guy where it's very easy to get in there and clean it out, not super concerned. One more time, no play. Yeah, everything seems to be good. Things flush, tighten down. Always be careful as you're doing any kind of disassembly that that you're not accidentally, like you've got it tight, but that's because this screw isn't all the way in. Because then if that pops in, you're loose again. Just a little side rant there. Centering is hard to adjust because it's a slip joint with no laterality. Yeah, that's a little bit. Let's back this off very slightly. Generally, there we go. We're centered. And there's the pole. A little rougher, but that'll wear in over time. I haven't barely carried this guy. This is factory freaking fresh. There we go. Yeah, that'll do. But the reason I commented on laterality is that on a frame lock, for instance, you have something that's always pushing against the blade. The frame lock on a frame lock is pushing the blade this direction. And so adjusting the pivot tension can help to modulate that a little bit. But in this case, that's not really a factor, but still having the pivot in the proper position did help the centering a little bit. So anyways, there you go. That's your Benchmade Proper. I've given it a proper clean out and disassembly. Hope this has been interesting to you, that you had a properly good time watching this, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day, and that nothing slips out of joint for you. Bye now. Should have saved that for the review. Bye now.